My wife's dad, the CEO, called security and said, "You're fired, boy." He made me hand over my badge in front of everyone. I just smiled and said, "Check your email." 10 seconds later, every screen in the room went black. The CFO whispered, "He just locked our servers." The legal director collapsed. "He owns the patent. I swear." If corporate America had a soundtrack, it would be the sound of someone clicking through PowerPoint slides while pretending they're changing the world. That's exactly where I was that Tuesday morning, sitting in Price Tech Innovation's glass aquarium of a boardroom, pretending to care about another quarterly review while fantasizing about my coffee mug, which I was 80% sure I'd left in the server room again. The CFO, Trevor, was babbling about synergy and cost efficiency, which are just polite ways of saying, we spent a fortune to look productive. I was halfway through doodling a little middle finger inside my meeting notes when the glass doors burst open like a movie villain entrance. And speak of the devil, Gerald Price, my father-in-law, the emperor of ego, stormed in. You could feel the collective panic hit the room. This man didn't walk. He conquered space. His voice, a mix between southern charm and dictatorship, echoed, "You're fired, boy. Hand over your badge." Just like that. No warning, no explanation, no, "Can we talk?" Just, "You're fired, boy." The room froze harder than the IT budget. My head tilted slightly because, honestly, I thought it was a joke. Gerald had that kind of humor. Funny if you ignore the emotional trauma. But then I saw it. From the far end of the table, Lauren, my wife, sitting there, like the Duchess of Dysfunction, smirking. My lovely wife. The same woman who said last week, "Babe, Dad's finally starting to respect you." Yeah, respect apparently meant public execution. Trevor's pen stopped mid-air. The HR director's mouth opened like a goldfish. Even the janitor outside paused mid-sweep to hear the next episode of How to Ruin a Marriage in 30 Seconds. Gerald planted his hands on the table and repeated himself, louder this time. "Don't make me say it again. Hand over your badge." The security guys were already on standby, looking at me like I just tried to hack the Pentagon. The irony? I built the system these geniuses were protecting. I leaned back in my chair, calm, composed, the kind of calm that makes other people nervous. "Sure thing," I said, pulling off my badge. I could feel Lauren's eyes burning into me, like she wanted to see me beg. Spoiler, I don't beg. I handed Gerald the badge and smiled. "But before I go, check your email." Gerald frowned, probably assuming I was being dramatic. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said, slipping my laptop shut. "Might want to check your inbox before you start celebrating." For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then, like divine timing, every monitor in the boardroom went black. The air changed instantly, panic replacing arrogance. The CFO tapped his keyboard. Nothing. The projector died. The server connection flatlined. The entire price tech system went dark, like a blackout with Wi-Fi trauma. A few people gasped. Trevor whispered, "Oh my God, he just locked the servers." The legal director fainted. I mean it. She actually hit the floor like someone unplugged her too. Gerald's face went through every stage of grief in 10 seconds. Confusion, denial, anger, and that special kind of regret that only comes from underestimating the quiet guy in it. "What did you do?" he barked. "Nothing illegal," I replied casually, standing up. "Just a little reminder that maybe firing your lead architect mid-quarter isn't a great business strategy." Lauren stood, her voice sharp as a nail. "Jack, what the hell is this?" "That," I said, pointing at the dead monitors, "is job security, or was until about 5 minutes ago." Gerald slammed his fist on the table. "You'll regret this." I chuckled. "I think you'll find that's a mutual experience." Security moved closer, hesitant. One of them whispered, "Do we actually touch him?" The other shrugged. "Man, I'm not getting near the dude who just shut down the internet." I gathered my stuff slowly, savoring the chaos. The CFO tried rebooting his laptop, mumbling prayers to the IT gods. Lauren's face was red with a mix of embarrassment and fury. Gerald was pacing like a bull in a suit. "You think you're smart?" he growled. "No," I said, walking toward the door. "I know I'm smart. You just think you're untouchable." I reached the door, then paused, turning slightly to the room full of frozen executives. "Oh, and Gerald, He looked up. Next time you fire your son-in-law, I said, at least wait until after lunch. HR hates cleaning up fainted lawyers on an empty stomach. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the emergency lights kicking in. I walked out with the kind of composure usually reserved for people who've already won. As I reached the hallway, I could still hear them behind me. Phones ringing, voices panicking, Gerald shouting something about calling corporate cyber forensics. I almost laughed out loud. I was corporate cyber forensics. Downstairs, the receptionist looked up as I passed, confused. Mr. West, everything okay? Depends who you ask, I said. If you ask the board, we're entering the apocalypse. She blinked. Should I cancel their lunch order? Better add tequila, I said, and kept walking. The lobby guards watched me approach, uncertain. One of them whispered, should we stop him? The older guard shook his head. Kid, if he wanted to, he could probably erase us from payroll. Let him go. I smiled. Finally, someone who got it. As I stepped outside, the sunlight hit me like a release. For the first time in years, I wasn't under Gerald's thumb, or Lauren's PR perfect world, or the soul-sucking politeness of corporate nonsense. I was free. Unemployed, sure, but gloriously free. Still, my brain was buzzing. What now? I just nuked my career and my marriage in one elegant keystroke. The logical side of me whispered, you could have handled that better. The sarcastic side screamed, that was art. I walked toward the parking lot, each step feeling lighter. The building behind me still gleamed in its high-tech arrogance, but I knew inside chaos had taken over. I could practically hear the panicked typing, the frantic calls to IT vendors, the CFO crying into his tie. I'd left them in digital purgatory. The funny part? I wasn't even mad. I'd given that company 6 years of my life. Late nights, no vacations, missed birthdays. I wrote their entire infrastructure from scratch. Every line of code, every firewall, every network architecture. And the thanks I got? A public execution in front of my wife. Well, ex-wife, probably by dinner. I reached my car, a beat-up Honda that Gerald once called the poor man's Uber, and slid into the driver's seat. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. The absurdity of it all started to hit me. I actually laughed. You're fired, boy, I muttered, mocking his tone. Boy. The man was 63 and still talked like he owned a plantation. I checked my phone. 52 missed calls in 10 minutes. Half of them from Lauren, half from numbers, labeled Do Not Answer. I ignored them all. Instead, I opened my email, glanced at the patent certificate sitting safely in my drive folder, and smiled. Oh, they were going to really regret underestimating me. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I caught a glimpse of the Price Tech logo one last time, a sleek metallic P with their slogan, Building the Future Together. I couldn't help it. I laughed so hard I had to pull over. Together, huh? Not anymore. By the time I hit the highway, my phone buzzed again. A text from Marcus, my teammate in network engineering. Bro, what did you do? I replied, just improved company efficiency. Permanently. His next message came seconds later. You're a legend. CFO looks like he's aged 10 years. I grinned. Somewhere behind me, the empire was collapsing. In front of me, unknown territory, freedom, chaos, maybe even a little revenge. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't playing by anyone else's script. I was writing my own. And it started with 3 beautiful words that echoed in my head as I drove away. Check your email. If people really knew what IT guy meant, they'd stop picturing some shy dude in a hoodie eating stale Doritos. Sure, we've got the hoodie part right, but under the awkward posture and caffeine addiction lives the closest thing to a wizard the modern world has. We're the ones who keep the lights on, literally. The ones who decide which passwords work and which accounts suddenly expire. And in my case, the one man in the entire Price Tech empire who could make the internet kneel by hitting enter. After walking out of that boardroom, I went straight home, grabbed a cold beer, and watched the corporate apocalypse unfold from my laptop like it was the Super Bowl. You know how some people binge Netflix crime dramas? I binge watch chaos. Preferably the kind Ike has. The internal network logs were lighting up like a Christmas tree. Every department was frantically trying to reboot their servers. Gerald probably had a team of panicked execs screaming at the IT help desk like toddlers demanding juice boxes. See, what Gerald never understood was that firing me wasn't just personal, it was idiotic. The man treated technology like it was a magical box powered by interns. He thought the cloud was an actual cloud. He once asked if phishing was related to fishing. This is the guy running a billion-dollar tech firm. And I, the idiot who married his daughter, was the one who built every digital brick in that empire. PriceTech's entire operating system, the custom server framework, the encryption key hierarchy, the AI modules they bragged about in investor calls, wasn't just my work, it was my property. My name was on the architecture patent. Filed, signed, notarized. I even used my middle name on purpose so they wouldn't notice it buried in the legal paperwork. So when I told Gerald to check his email, what he actually opened was a formal notice of intellectual property lockdown. In legalese, that means touch my code again, and your company dies in the dark. I know what you're thinking. Dramatic much? Yeah. But sometimes you've got to serve revenge with a touch of theater, especially when the man you're dealing with wears $2,000 suits and yells, "boy," like it's still the 1950s. I cracked open another beer and grinned at the headline. Now trending on TechWorld. PriceTech internal system outage. Sources say sabotage. Sabotage. Cute word. Makes it sound criminal instead of strategic self-defense. I wasn't stealing anything. I was just reminding them who built their kingdom. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus, my guy from network engineering. Dude, they're losing it. The board just called an emergency meeting. Gerald's sweating through his shirt like a sinner in church. I laughed. How bad is it? CFO just cried. The HR director said she's updating her resume mid-call. Oh, and Jenny from legal says Gerald asked if rebooting means unplugging the building. That one almost made me spit my drink. Tell Jenny to record everything, I said. History deserves to remember this. While the rest of the company panicked, I opened my secure folder. Yeah, the one encrypted with a 512-bit key even NASA couldn't crack. Inside were the crown jewels, the master server scripts, the AI core, the proprietary predictive engine, all sitting neatly with my signature timestamp. Every line of code belonged to me, and I had legal proof to back it up. The beautiful part? I hadn't even done anything technically destructive. All I did was activate a safeguard built into the system, a feature that locked the servers when any unauthorized modification occurred. I designed it years ago after Gerald suggested outsourcing IT to some cheaper overseas firm. That's when I decided to build a kill switch. Insurance policy, baby. While I watched the live feed of PriceTech's meltdown, I got another ping. This time from Lauren, my wife, or maybe ex-wife, pending legal review. Lauren. What did you do, Jack? Me. Just some light housekeeping. Lauren. Dad's furious. He's calling lawyers. And he should call an electrician too, because the lights just went out in half the building. Lauren. This isn't funny. I disagree. She didn't reply after that, probably because she was in PR and couldn't decide whether to issue a statement or throw a lamp at me. It's funny how quickly power shifts when people realize who actually holds it. For years, I sat quietly in those meetings, pretending to care while executives threw around words like innovation and vision. But I was the one making sure their vision didn't crash when the Wi-Fi hiccuped. They just never noticed, because real power doesn't wear a tie. It writes the code that decides whose tie still logs into payroll. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jack, weren't you worried about getting sued? Please, I didn't break the law. I built the law they were running on. The patent filing was airtight. I'd triple-checked it with Jenny months ago. Legally, they were using my software under my terms. Ethically? Well, they just fired the guy who wrote the terms. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating off the nightstand. It was Marcus again, voice full of caffeine and hysteria. Bro, Gerald's losing it on live TV. CNBC's just asked about the outage, and he blamed a temporary software migration error. Translation, I said, sipping my coffee. He has no idea what's going on. Exactly. Also, investors are calling you, like directly. Somebody leaked your patent filing to the press. I smiled. Probably Jenny. She always had perfect timing. My inbox was flooded. Venture capitalists, journalists, even a few headhunters. Everyone wanted to talk to the guy who'd just taken down a corporate giant without breaking a sweat. I ignored most of them. Let them chase the story. I had bigger plans. Around noon, I decided to check PriceTech's website. Down. Every subdomain, every customer portal, dead. The only thing that worked was a single error page reading, "Access restricted. Please contact system administrator," which technically was still me. I almost wanted to send them an invoice for consultation hours. I threw on a hoodie and headed to my favorite coffee shop downtown, the kind that charges $7 for caffeine and calls it artisan. The barista, Maya, looked up when she saw me. "Hey, aren't you that Price Tech guy? You're trending." "Guilty," I said. "You got Wi-Fi?" She laughed. "We did until you probably broke it." Touché. I found a corner seat, opened my laptop, and pulled up the real-time network map I still had remote access to. Watching their internal communications crash in slow motion was poetic. Emails bouncing, project management tools timing out, Gerald's calendar empty because, well, his digital assistant was currently locked in virtual purgatory. Then I saw it. Someone had tried to brute force my encryption key at 10:47 a.m. Amateurs. I added a little note to the log file that would pop up if they tried again. Nice try. Maybe hire people who actually passed CompSci 101. While I was basking in digital dominance, a man slid into the chair across from me without asking. Early 40s, expensive watch, Wall Street haircut. "Jack West?" he asked. "Depends who's asking," I replied. He smiled. "Ethan Parker. Venture equity. We invest in disruptive talent. And you, my friend, just disrupted a $2 billion company before breakfast." I sipped my coffee. "Yeah, I tend to overachieve." "We want to talk," he said, sliding me his card. "Phoenix Capital. We back founders who don't play nice." The name stuck in my head. Phoenix. Rising from ashes. Fitting. I pocketed the card. "I'll think about it." By the time I left the cafe, my phone had hit 400 unread messages. Half were people begging for interviews. The rest were hate mail from anonymous Price Tech employees still in shock. I scrolled through them, shaking my head. One said, "You doomed us, dude." Another said, "Teach me how you did it." Humanity summarized. That night, I sat at my desk surrounded by sticky notes, empty pizza boxes, and the faint glow of my server terminal. I wasn't just enjoying revenge anymore. I was planning a rebuild. The kind of company that wouldn't worship suits and stockholders, but actual creators. As I coded, I replayed Gerald's voice in my head. "You're fired, boy." That single line had triggered everything. But now, in the quiet hum of my apartment, I realized something. He didn't fire me. He freed me. I pulled up my code base, typed a few commands, and smiled as the terminal responded exactly how I wanted. Somewhere across town, Price Tech servers emitted another error ping. I could almost hear Gerald screaming into a phone, probably blaming the weather or those damn millennials. Marcus texted again. "You're a legend, man. They tried restoring backups, but guess what? Your authentication key expired." "Yeah," I replied, like their business model. When I finally leaned back, stretching, I caught my reflection in the laptop screen. Tired eyes, messy hair, smug grin. The quiet IT guy who once blended into fluorescent office wallpaper was gone. In his place stood the man behind the black screen, the ghost in their machine. And tomorrow? I'd make sure the whole world knew it. Walking out of Price Tech that day felt like leaving a cult, minus the free donuts and fake smiles. The automatic doors slid open behind me with that soft hydraulic hiss, like the building itself was sighing in relief. 6 years of 12-hour days, performance reviews, and Gerald Price's motivational insults, gone. No farewell cake, no HR hug, not even a cheap pen with the company logo. Just me, my laptop bag, and the faint smell of corporate desperation. The lobby had been chaos on my way down. Assistants whispering, security pretending they knew what to do, executives refreshing their dead laptops like addicts waiting for a fix. Every step I took, someone tried to make eye contact, half respect, half fear. One guy from accounting even muttered, "Godspeed, man," like I was heading off to war. By the time I hit the front steps, the adrenaline started to fade. That's when the reality punched through. I just detonated a billion-dollar company. and my marriage. Freedom was supposed to feel lighter, right? Instead, it was this weird mix of euphoria and dread, like skydiving with a parachute you packed while drunk. As I crossed the parking lot, a familiar voice called out, "Yo, West!" Marcus jogged over. Same hoodie, same caffeine and chaos grin. The guy looked like he hadn't slept since the Obama administration. He held up a tiny USB drive like it was the Holy Grail. "Just in case," he said. I blinked. "What is that?" He grinned wider. "Backup of your revenge. Logs, code fragments, copies of those emails Gerald sent calling you the IT janitor. You know, insurance." I stared at him. "You backed up my revenge?" He shrugged. "You're my hero now, man. Heroes deserve archives." I took the USB and laughed. "Remind me to put you in charge of fan club memberships," he smirked. "Already made a Discord for it." We fist bumped. Somewhere above us, a light flickered in one of the conference rooms. Maybe it was a power surge. Maybe it was divine approval. Inside the building, someone yelled, "Nothing's working!" followed by a desperate, "Try unplugging it and plugging it back in." Classic. I started walking again, and with each step, I could feel something shifting inside me. 6 years of playing corporate chess, always 3 moves behind because the CEO's daughter wanted a project manager husband instead of a partner. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Done pretending, done begging for validation, done attending those fake holiday parties where everyone compared bonuses like it was a sport. The automatic doors closed behind me with a sound that might as well have been a period at the end of a long, miserable sentence. At the edge of the parking lot, Tommy, the maintenance guy who'd been fixing that same leaky pipe since 2021, gave me a thumbs up. "Heard the lights flickered upstairs," he said, grinning. "Good job, man." "Thanks, Tommy," I said. "Consider that my exit interview." He laughed so hard, he nearly dropped his wrench. I walked to my car, the world suddenly quieter than it had been in years. No buzz of Slack notifications, no constant vibration of urgent emails, no Lauren texting me reminders about her father's legacy. Just wine and open sky and the realization that for the first time in forever, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Still, freedom has this weird aftertaste, like you've escaped the cage but left your favorite snacks behind. As I started the engine, my phone lit up. 58 new messages, 22 missed calls. I glanced at the screen and saw Lauren's name flashing again and again, then Gerald, then unknown number, which was probably some lawyer already trying to look brave. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and pulled out of the lot. The Price Tech building shrank in the rearview mirror. Glass, steel, and ego, all reflecting the sun like a middle finger to humility. Their slogan, "Building the future together," gleamed in silver letters near the top. Together, my ass. I built that future solo while they all took credit. As I merged onto the highway, my chest loosened. I rolled down the window, let the wind slap my face, and laughed. Not a polite chuckle, the kind of unfiltered, borderline maniacal laugh that makes people at stoplights stare. It hit me then. I wasn't angry at Gerald anymore. Anger meant I still cared. What I felt now was cleaner, like deleting junk files from your brain. Traffic was thick, typical city mess. I ended up behind a black Mercedes, Lauren's model. Figures. Every lane I switched into, there was another one. Apparently, her dad's money had sponsored half the county's car market. By the time I hit the strip mall exit, my stomach reminded me I hadn't eaten since the morning chaos. I pulled into Joe's Coffee and Bagels, the same place I used to stop before those long boardroom marathons. Walking in felt strange, like seeing your high school gym years after graduation. Same walls, same burnt coffee smell, same kid at the counter who never looked older. He looked up, froze, and said, "Hey, you're that Price Tech guy, right?" "Dude, you're trending on Twitter." I raised an eyebrow. "Already?" "Yeah, man. Hashtag Price Tech Apocalypse. Someone posted a video of Gerald yelling, 'You're fired, Bobo,' and you just standing there smiling like Batman. It's everywhere." I groaned. "Great, I've gone viral for unemployment." He laughed. "You want your usual?" "Yeah," I said. "And throw in one of those chocolate muffins. I just lost a 6-figure job. I deserve carbs." When I sat down, the shop's TV was playing the local news. A reporter stood outside the Price Tech building, hair whipped by the wind, pretending to understand what server infrastructure meant. Behind her, you could see frantic employees pacing like extras in a disaster movie. The headline read, "Major tech outage leaves hundreds idle. Sources say fired employee involved." I smirked. Involved? Sure, like gravity's involved in falling. Halfway through my muffin, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Jenny in legal. Jenny. CFO's crying. Gerald's threatening to sue God. HR's asking if you'll consider consulting. Me. Depends. Do they offer dental? Jenny. Seriously though, they can't even print emails. You broke their digital backbone. Me. Nah, I just unplugged their arrogance. I could almost hear her laugh through the screen. Jenny was one of the few sane people in that circus. Smart, sarcastic, the kind of lawyer who could recite entire NDAs from memory but still swear like a sailor. I finished my coffee, threw away the cup, and stepped outside. The sunlight felt different, less filtered, more real. Maybe because, for once, I wasn't seeing it through tinted conference room glass. On the sidewalk, an older man in a suit was pacing, yelling into his Bluetooth. "I told them to back up the servers," he shouted. "What do you mean they can't log in? Who's the admin?" I passed him, smiled, and said, "That would be me." He blinked, mouth half open, as I walked off. By the time I got home, exhaustion hit like a freight train. The living room was spotless, Lauren's aesthetic, minimalist chic, where even emotions weren't allowed to clutter. I kicked off my shoes and sank into the couch. My laptop pinged as it connected to my private network. I checked the live access logs for Price Tech. Hundreds of failed login attempts. Error messages stacking like digital dominoes. I almost felt bad. Almost. A soft chime pulled me back, my doorbell. I opened it to find Marcus again, holding 2 beers. "Couldn't resist watching the fireworks with the man of the hour," he said. We sat on the porch, feet up, watching the sunset bleed over the rooftops. "You really gonna be okay?" he asked. "Eventually," I said. "Right now I'm somewhere between panic and peace. Let's call it panic-adjacent peace," he chuckled. "So what's next? You got the patent, the code, and a trending hashtag." I took a long sip. Next, I think I build something new. Something that doesn't need a price to exist. Marcus nodded. "You'll need a team." "I've got one," I said, tapping the USB in my pocket. "Just need a name." He looked thoughtful. "Phoenix Systems." I smirked. "Why Phoenix?" "Because you burned their empire and walked away with the ashes." I laughed, clinking my bottle against his. "Phoenix it is." As the sky darkened, my phone buzzed again, Lauren's name flashing one more time. I watched it ring out, the screen dimming slowly until it went silent. Freedom, I realized, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just stops calling. For the first time in years, I leaned back, looked up at the sky, and didn't feel small. I didn't feel fired. I felt free. I pulled into the driveway a good 3 hours earlier than I ever did on a weekday, which meant I was about to interrupt Lauren's favorite sport, pretending she ran a Fortune 500 company from our living room. The blinds were half closed, the good rug was rolled out, and the faint echo of her professional voice drifted through the window. I could practically hear the corporate buzzwords bouncing off the drywall. I walked in quietly, hoping for at least a second to process what I'd just done. No such luck. Lauren sat at the dining table, headset on, ring light blasting her face like she was auditioning for the Bachelor C-Suite edition. On her laptop screen were 10 other perfectly filtered faces. "At Price Tech, we pride ourselves on transparency and innovation," she said with the confidence of a cult leader. The irony almost made me choke. Transparency? The entire company was currently running on blackout mode. Innovation? Please. Their biggest innovation today was discovering what total system failure looked like in 4K. She noticed me in the corner of her camera frame and froze mid-sentence. Excuse me, everyone," she said sweetly, muting her mic. Then she hissed, "Jack, what are you doing here? It's Tuesday." "Observing the ruins," I said, hanging my jacket. "You might want to save your slides. The servers are on life support." Her eyes widened. "What?" "Your dad fired me," I said casually, heading for the fridge. And about 10 seconds later, Price Tech's network decided it needed a vacation. The fridge door slammed shut behind me. She stood, headset still hanging around her neck. "You didn't—" "Oh, I did," I said, popping open a soda. Every file, every server, every prototype, all perfectly safe. With me. She pressed a hand to her forehead like she was in a soap opera. Jack, do you have any idea what this means? Yeah, I said. It means your dad should have read the contract before treating me like an unpaid intern with Wi-Fi privileges. She took a breath through her teeth and then, you just tanked an entire corporation because your ego got bruised. No. Oh, I said. I tanked an entire corporation because your father thinks firing people in front of their spouses is a power move. I simply responded with equal enthusiasm. Her jaw clenched. God, you're impossible. I grinned. No, just patent protected. The sarcasm didn't help. It never did, but at least it kept me sane. She started pacing, muttering things like public relations nightmare and investor confidence. I watched her like someone watching a cat chase a laser pointer. Impressive energy, zero progress. Lauren, I finally said, you might want to warn your dad before he calls CNBC again. They're about to report that his proprietary code legally belongs to me. She spun around. You filed the patent under your name? Of course, I said. You think I spent 6 years building his empire just to let him trademark my initials? She threw her hands up. Unbelievable. Do you ever think about consequences? All the time, I said. That's why I wrote them into the source code. For a second, she just stared at me. Half disbelief, half admiration she'd never admit out loud. Lauren wasn't evil. She was just born into a world where people thought power was hereditary. She believed loyalty was a brand, not a principle. Her phone started vibrating on the table. The caller ID said Dad. Of course. She answered, pacing into the kitchen. I could hear his muffled shouting through the earpiece. Something about disaster recovery and lawsuits. Lauren looked at me helplessly. He wants to talk to you. I took a sip of my drink. He can send a calendar invite. Jack, please. He's losing it. Good, I said. Maybe he'll finally lose the arrogance too. She lowered the phone. He says you'll never work in tech again. I shrugged. Then I'll build my own tech. Easier that way, less paperwork. Her voice softened for a second. You realize you just declared war on my family? Your family declared it first, I said. I just brought better weapons. The silence that followed could have frozen lava. She looked like she wanted to scream and hug me at the same time. Instead, she put the phone back to her ear and whispered, I'll call you later, Dad. Then she ended the call, slid the phone onto the counter, and exhaled. You could have just quit, she said quietly. Yeah, I replied, and then watched them use my work to make another billion while pretending I was a footnote in a press release. Hard pass. She folded her arms. What about as I paused. You mean you and me, or you and the company? That one hit her. The confident PR facade cracked just a little. Don't do that, she said. You know I didn't want this. Didn't you? I asked. You smiled when he fired me, Lauren. That wasn't, she started, but I cut her off. I saw it. That half smirk you do when you think something's finally aligning in your perfect PR world. Guess what? It did. Just not the way you hoped. Her eyes shimmered, and for a second I thought she'd cry. But no, Lauren Price didn't cry. She rebranded emotions. Jack, I can fix this, she said. If you unlock the servers, maybe Dad... Not happening, I said, walking toward my office. Jack, I stopped at the doorway. You want to fix something? Start by asking your father why he thought humiliating me in front of a boardroom was good management. Then I closed the door. Inside my office, the one room she never redecorated, I finally breathed. My setup looked like NASA's bargain cousin. Dual monitors, server racks, half-empty coffee mugs. I sat down, fired up the terminal, and checked the status logs. As expected, every price tech node was offline, pinging in vain for access approval. I opened the encrypted backup folder labeled just in case. The files glowed like treasure. 6 years of my life, every late-night breakthrough, every line of code no one clapped for. It was all there, mine. Outside, I could hear Lauren pacing again. She muttered things like shareholders and optics, PR lingo for damage control. The poor thing still believed reputation could out-talk truth. I leaned back and smiled. Welcome to the real world, sweetheart. Out here, optics don't reboot servers. Around 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. Great. Either pizza or legal papers. I opened it to find Jenny Miller from legal standing there, still in her pencil skirt and heels, hair slightly windblown. Wow, I said. I didn't expect the cavalry. She held up a manila folder. Thought you'd want a copy of this before Gerald starts rewriting history. I took it and scanned the front page. U.S. Patent number 45872A. Proprietary Framework System Architecture, inventor Jackie West. Jenny grinned. Officially registered. They can't touch it without your consent. I whistled. You're an angel in a blazer. Try lawyer with popcorn, she said. Half the office is watching the meltdown like it's the Super Bowl. Anyone take bets yet? Yeah, $10 says Gerald fires the CFO before midnight. I laughed. Put 20 on it for me. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. You know, you could walk away rich right now. Sell them back the license. Negotiate. I met her eyes. And let them win? Not my style. Jenny nodded slowly. Didn't think so. She handed me a flash drive. Here's their internal chat log from today. You might enjoy the drama. After she left, I plugged it in. Lines of frantic messages filled the screen. CFO Trevor. Does anyone know where the source files are? Devlad Rick. Ask Jack. CFO Trevor. He's gone. Devlad Rick. Then we're screwed. HR Susan. Legal just fainted again. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my soda. Justice, serve ice cold and documented. By the time Lauren finally knocked on my door, it was dark outside. Can we talk? She asked softly. Depends. It tends, I said. Is this a conversation or a PR briefing? She ignored the jab and sat on the edge of my desk. Dad's threatening to sue. He says you violated your employment contract. Good luck with that, I said. Page 12, Clause 4B. Any original intellectual property created by the employee outside of explicit work hours shall remain the sole property of said employee. Guess who logged every minute I worked? Her shoulders dropped. You really thought of everything. Years of being underestimated does that to a guy. She looked at me quietly, then said, You know he'll never forgive you. I met her gaze. He doesn't have to. I'm not his priest. I'm the guy who just sent him to business purgatory. That finally cracked a smile out of her, despite herself. You're impossible, she repeated. Consistent, though. She stood and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned back. You might have won today, she said. But you lost me. That one stung more than I wanted to admit. I stayed silent as she left, the click of her heels fading down the hall. The door closed, leaving me with the hum of my computer and the faint echo of everything we'd built, both the marriage and the empire, crumbling in stereo. I stared at the patent certificate glowing on my screen. For a moment, victory felt heavy. Then my phone buzzed, a message from Marcus. Marcus. Bro, CFO just quit. Gerald threw a monitor. Legal director fainted number 3. I smirked. The universe had perfect timing. Freedom, I realized, might come with wreckage, but damn if it didn't feel good to stand in the ashes knowing you lit the match. By the time the sun rose over Price Tech the next morning, the company looked less like a tech powerhouse and more like a daytime soap opera directed by caffeine and chaos. From my couch, coffee in hand, hoodie on, news streaming, I watched it unfold like the season finale of a show I'd just canceled. The local business channel had turned Price Tech into their favorite punching bag. The anchor was trying to sound professional, but you could hear the excitement in her voice. Breaking news. Price Tech Innovations is experiencing a full system outage for the second consecutive day. Sources confirm that the company's proprietary code was filed under a personal patent belonging to former CTO Jack West. That last part hit like a grenade. Former CTO Jack West. Yeah, that's me, America. The man your corporate overlords shouldn't have pissed off. As soon as the word patent hit the airwaves, I knew Gerald's blood pressure probably set a new record. And I wasn't wrong. Jenny from Legal texted me 30 seconds later. Jenny, he's screaming in the lobby. CFO's crying again. IT guy from floor 3 just quit to become a yoga instructor. Me. Can't blame him. Namaste, Gerald. I set the mug down and cracked a grin. This was the kind of poetic justice you couldn't code. I opened my inbox. Hundreds of new messages. Some from lawyers, some from recruiters, and one from an investor whose name made me pause. Evelyn Chen. She was Price Tech's vice chair of the board, the quiet type who didn't say much during meetings but always looked like she was mentally calculating who to fire next. Her email was short. Mr. West, I believe you and I should talk. Off the record, E. Chen. I sipped my coffee. Off the record, that's boardroom language for the Emperor's naked, and we need new clothes fast. Before I could even think about replying, Marcus FaceTimed me. The screen lit up with his usual bedhead chaos. Dude, you're trending on Reddit. Someone made a meme. Your face photoshopped on Thanos snapping his fingers while Price Tech disappears. I laughed so hard I almost spilled my drink. That's art. Bro, this is insane, he said. People are calling you the digital divorce. Catchy, I said. Better than the guy who married HR's nightmare. Marcus snorted. Also, Gerald's been calling everyone demanding access to the code. Jenny said he tried to get 8 to rebuild it from scratch. Let me guess, I said. They failed before breakfast. Worse, Marcus said. They crashed payroll. No one's getting paid this week. I leaned back, letting the satisfaction wash over me. Justice through direct deposit denial. But amidst all the laughter, I knew this was bigger than revenge now. This was about ownership. For 6 years, I'd been the ghost behind the curtain, the guy who made their empire run while Gerald took the credit. Every investor pitch, every award dinner, every press release, they'd called it Price Tech's proprietary system. Well, not anymore. The world finally knew the truth, and there was no reboot for that. Still, I wasn't naive. I knew a man like Gerald wouldn't go down quietly. He'd lawyer up, manipulate headlines, probably even play the family betrayal card. So I decided to get ahead of it. I opened Twitter, X, whatever Elon's calling it this week, and typed, to clarify, I didn't hack Price Tech. I simply withdrew my intellectual property. You wouldn't call a landlord a criminal for changing the locks. Within minutes, it had thousands of likes. By noon, it was on CNBC's ticker. Gerald must have thrown another monitor. Around 1 p.m., the phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. This is Jack. Mr. West, a woman's voice said, smooth and controlled. Evelyn Chen, I assume you saw my email. I did, I said, and I assume this isn't a congratulatory call. She chuckled softly. Not yet, but it could be. The board is, let's say, exploring options. Gerald's leadership has created liabilities, and you're one of them, but potentially also a solution. Meaning we'd rather buy the patent from you than let the company collapse entirely. I grinned. You'll have to make it worth my time, Ms. Chen. I expected that, she said. Can you meet me at the Jefferson Hotel? 1 hour. When a board vice chair calls a meeting that fast, you don't say no. You bring popcorn. I showed up early because nothing irritates rich people like punctuality. The Jefferson was peak old money decor, marble floors, chandeliers, and the faint smell of overpriced cigars. Evelyn was already there, perfectly composed in a navy suit, tablet open like she was about to negotiate peace between nations. Mr. West, she said, standing to shake my hand, I appreciate your time. Appreciate might be the wrong word, I said. Your CEO called me boy before firing me, remember? Her expression didn't even twitch. Yes, and now the boy owns the foundation of our entire company. Irony's a cruel teacher. I liked her already. She gestured for me to sit. Let's be direct. The patent is in your name. It controls our flagship software and key AI infrastructure. Without it, Price Tech will face bankruptcy within the quarter. Sounds accurate, I said. We'd like to purchase the rights back, she continued. Clean transfer, no drama. I smirked. You realize drama is my new brand, right? She smiled faintly. Then let's make it worth your while. She slid a document across the table. My eyes caught the offer figure. 600,000. Cute. I pushed it back. Add another zero and drop the NDA clause. She blinked. You're asking for $6 million and public credit? Correction, I said. I'm asking for market value and dignity. NDA's not negotiable. You want my silence? You can't afford it. Evelyn studied me like a chess player, realizing the opponent she underestimated just took her queen. I'll need to speak with the board. Take your time, I said, standing up. Just remember, every minute you wait, your servers stay dark and your investors stay nervous. She looked up. You really enjoy this, don't you? Ma'am, I said with a grin, I worked for your company for 6 years. This is the most fun I've ever had. I left her there, stunned but impressed. By the time I hit the parking lot, I was already on the phone with Marcus. They offered 600 grand, he laughed. 600 for a billion-dollar code base? That's like tipping a hostage taker? Exactly, I said. So I countered with 6 million and no NDA. Legend, he said. You're basically Batman with a Wi-Fi password. Back home, my inbox exploded again. Reporters, investors, random people asking if I'd teach them how to own their boss. I ignored all of it and opened a fresh doc titled Phoenix Systems Business Plan. Yeah, I'd decided on the name. If Price Tech was burning, I was going to rise from the ashes. By evening, Jenny stopped by with Chinese takeout and gossip. Gerald threw a chair at the wall when he saw your tweet, she said between bites. Then he demanded to know how patents work. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my noodles. Like, this man runs a tech empire and doesn't understand patents? He also asked if source code means physical paperwork, she added. Jesus, I said. No wonder the company's allergic to progress. Jenny smirked. The best part? The CFO actually said the words, "He owns the patent," out loud in front of the entire board. That's my favorite sentence in the English language, I said. She handed me a fortune cookie. I cracked it open. The slip read, "Your hard work will soon pay off." Wow, I said. Even the cookies are on my side. Jenny raised her glass of soda. To poetic justice. We clinked. Later that night, while the city hummed outside, I sat in my home office, looking at the glowing patent certificate on my screen. It was more than a document. It was proof. Proof that the quiet guy in the corner, the one nobody took seriously, could own an empire with nothing but brains and backup files. A notification pinged. Email from Evelyn Chen. Mr. West, the board has reviewed your counter. We're prepared to meet your financial request, pending additional discussion on public acknowledgement. Let's finalize tomorrow. 6 million and my name in headlines. Not bad for a day's work. As I shut down my laptop, I caught my reflection in the black screen. Not the meek AT guy they used to ignore. Not the boy Gerald dismissed. Just a man who finally realized the difference between being needed and being valued. And tomorrow, the whole world was going to learn that lesson too. By noon the next day, Price Tech was officially in meltdown mode. And not the quiet, let's fix this internally kind. I mean, public collapse. The kind that makes shareholders call their therapists and CNBC schedule emergency panels with industry experts, who all look like they live on LinkedIn. The board had called an emergency meeting again. Words spread fast. Gerald was cornered, the CFO was allegedly crying again, and the company's entire digital infrastructure was about as stable as a toddler on a sugar high. Meanwhile, I was sitting in a downtown coffee shop watching it unfold in real time. There's something magical about watching your enemies self-destruct with free Wi-Fi. My phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from Marcus, Jenny, and a few brave souls still trapped inside the Price Tech ship. Marcus, board meeting in full swing. CFO says we lost everything. Jenny, legal director didn't faint this time. She just quietly left. Well, smart move, Marcus. Gerald tried to log into Slack. It told him, access denied. He threw his laptop. Me. He always did have anger management issues. Maybe now he can manage without the anger. Or the company. On the big screen above the cafe counter, one of the news channels ran the headline. Price Tech crashes. CEO fires son-in-law. Accidentally fires company. Underneath was a photo of Gerald looking like someone who'd just realized his yacht's on fire. I sipped my espresso and smiled. Ah, I muttered. Finally some honest reporting. Across the city, Price Tech's headquarters looked like a panic convention. Gerald had apparently summoned the full board, every vice president, every investor, every person with a title longer than their actual responsibilities. The glass-walled boardroom, usually sterile and smug, now looked like a crime scene. Jenny texted me a play-by-play, like a live sports commentator. Jenny, Gerald's opening statement, we can rebuild it. Evelyn's face says she wants to rebuild him instead. Me, I'll get popcorn. Jenny, CFO whispered, sir, we can't even open PowerPoint. Me, beautiful. Gerald paced at the head of the table, sweating through his designer shirt, ranting about discipline and loyalty. You'd think he was rallying troops for war instead of trying to log into his email. We will not be blackmailed by some rogue ex-employee, he bellowed, slamming the table. Evelyn Chen, calm as a sniper, leaned forward. Rogue ex-employee? You mean the man who architected our entire system, holds the patent, and owns the IP you've been illegally profiting from? Gerald blinked, momentarily thrown. He was paid to build it. Evelyn smiled the way a lawyer does when she knows she's holding the winning hand. Yes, and he was smart enough to file it independently. That's not betrayal, Gerald. That's competence. Jenny later told me half the board nodded at that. The other half quietly checked their phones, probably wondering how to distance themselves before the crash reached their resumes. Meanwhile, the CFO, Trevor, bless his financially fragile soul, tried to break the tension. Sir, maybe we could, negotiate with Mr. West? Gerald shot him a glare, so intense I'm surprised Trevor didn't spontaneously combust. Negotiate? With him? The man held this company hostage? Evelyn leaned back, unbothered. Technically, he didn't. He just locked his own property. You're the one who trespassed. You could practically hear the sound of his ego imploding. Across town, I was reading all this from Jenny's steady stream of texts, laughing like an unbothered villain. The barista kept giving me looks. Rough day? She asked. I grinned. For them, yeah. I'm having a great one. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again, this time a call from Evelyn. I answered with my best fake professionalism. Jack West, independent contractor and professional consequences provider. Enjoying the show? She asked dryly. Immensely. Good. You'll enjoy the encore even more. What encore? Gerald's about to be voted out. I nearly spit out my drink. You're kidding. Not even slightly, and she said. The board's had enough. They're calling it gross mismanagement of intellectual assets. I call it poetic justice. Can I send balloons? I asked. Please don't, she said. We're trying to maintain some decorum. I chuckled. Understood. Within the hour, she sent me a photo. Gerald storming out of the boardroom, red-faced, tie undone, escorted by security. Caption, the Emperor has no firewall. I couldn't help it. I laughed so loud, people turned around in the cafe. Sorry, I said, waving it off. Corporate allergies. Jenny followed up with a voice note. Evelyn just said, and I quote, we should have fired the wrong price years ago. At that exact moment, my inbox lit up with notifications. Press statements, legal notices, interview requests. Word had spread that the board had officially suspended Gerald Price pending a full investigation. Price Tech stock had dropped 38% in an hour. To the outside world, it looked like a tragedy. To me, it looked like a Tuesday miracle. I walked out of the cafe, sun on my face, air tasting sweeter than freedom. Across the street, a billboard for Price Tech still flickered, half-lit, glitching, ironically displaying the words, tomorrow's technology, today. I smirked. More like yesterday's arrogance. Forever. But the chaos didn't stop there. My phone buzzed again, Marcus on FaceTime, grinning like a kid who'd found the cookie jar. Bro, Gerald's meltdown is trending #1 on TikTok. Someone synced it with, we didn't start the fire. You can't script this level of karma, I said. Oh, and CNBC wants you for an interview, Marcus added. They called me trying to find your number. Me? Live TV? I asked. Not my style. He snorted. Come on, man. Say something savage. I grinned. Maybe. An hour later, I was sitting in my living room, laptop camera on, green tea in hand, being patched into a live segment titled, The Man Who Brought Down Price Tech. The host was this slick guy with perfect hair and a smile that screamed, sponsored by caffeine. Mr. West, he began, the internet is calling you the IT Robin Hood. How do you respond to accusations that you intentionally sabotaged Price Tech? I smiled. Sabotage? No. I simply removed my property. If you rent a house, stop paying, and the landlord changes the locks, do you call it sabotage? He laughed nervously. So, you stand by your actions? Absolutely, I said. They fired the man who built the castle and forgot he owned the drawbridge. Twitter loved that line. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Memes, quotes, reaction videos. My face next to a burning castle emoji. Marcus texted me, bro, you broke the internet twice in 1 week. By the evening, I couldn't walk down the block without hearing someone mention Price Tech. News vans camped outside their HQ. Former employees leaked screenshots. One read, "Gerald's trying to reboot the company manually. He's on the floor pressing random buttons on a server." And just when I thought the circus was over, I got another message from Evelyn. "Mr. West, the board would like to meet with you again, this time formally, tomorrow at 9 a.m. We'll discuss a potential acquisition offer. Also, thank you for accelerating corporate evolution." I laughed out loud. Corporate evolution. That's one way to describe watching a dinosaur CEO go extinct in high definition. The next morning, the Price Tech building looked like a haunted castle. Reporters outside, employees whispering, security guards trying to pretend they didn't see me walk in. Inside, Evelyn greeted me with that calm smile. "Mr. West, quite the week you've had." "Busy," I said, "but productive." She led me into the boardroom, the same one where Gerald had fired me days earlier. Now he was gone, replaced by empty seats and nervous faces. The air still smelled faintly of panic and ego. Evelyn gestured toward the head of the table. "That seat's open now." I sat down just because I could. One of the older board members cleared his throat. "Mr. West, we'd like to discuss a partnership. Phoenix Systems, correct?" My eyebrows lifted. Word travels fast. Evelyn smiled. "We believe collaboration could be mutually beneficial. You bring innovation, we bring funding and reach." I leaned back. "You mean I bring competence and you bring a checkbook?" She didn't even argue. "Precisely." I grinned. "Then we can talk numbers. But just to be clear, this time I own my seat at the table, permanently." Evelyn extended her hand. "Understood." As I shook it, I caught my reflection in the glass wall. The same man Gerald once dismissed as the boy from It. Now sitting in his chair, wearing his smirk, negotiating from his ashes. Poetic didn't even begin to cover it. 3 days after the board officially exiled Gerald Price to whatever executive hell old CEOs go to, my phone rang with a number that screamed, "Law firm, with too much mahogany." I was halfway through microwaving leftover lo mein when I picked up. "Mr. West," said a voice so polite it sounded apologetic for existing. "This is Robert Hale from Price Tech's legal counsel." I grinned. "Bob, you're alive. I was worried Gerald might have sacrificed you to the printer gods." A pause. "Yes, well, we'd like to discuss a potential resolution to the ongoing intellectual property matter." "Resolution?" I repeated, setting the takeout box down. Such a calm word for "please don't sue us into extinction." He cleared his throat. "The company would like to offer a settlement of $600,000 in exchange for full transfer of the patent and a mutual non-disclosure agreement." I actually laughed. Not a chuckle, a full-on laugh that startled my cat. "Bob, 600 grand? That's adorable. I burned through that much emotional damage therapy working there." Silence on the line. "Let's make this easy," I said. "Double it, drop the NDA, and I want an apology letter from your fearless leader, hand-signed, not a DocuSign, real pen ink, preferably with tears." "That is not standard procedure. Neither was firing your CTO mid-meeting," I said. "But here we are." He exhaled like a man watching his retirement drift away. "I'll speak with my client." "Please do," I said, "and tell them the clock's ticking. Every hour my code sits locked is another hour your investors Google bankruptcy lawyers." When the call ended, I texted Marcus. Me. They blinked first. "Marcus, you're basically Batman with a Wi-Fi password." I tossed the phone aside and leaned back, savoring the quiet. There's a specific joy in knowing you finally get to name your price. Literally. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls, 3 voicemails from Bob, and one from Jenny that simply said, "Call me before you check your email." I checked my email. Subject: urgent, settlement revision. Price Tech's letterhead, shiny and pompous as always, filled the screen. They'd bumped the offer to $1.2 million, still clinging to the NDA like a toddler with a pacifier. Cute. I called Jenny. "They're panicking," she said. "Investors are threatening to pull out unless they prove they have a deal on the table. So they doubled the insult money." "Yep, Evelyn's pretending to mediate, but she's playing both sides. My guess, she wants you in control of the code, but out of the headlines." "Too late," I said. "I'm trending under #patent daddy." She snorted. "Oh my God." Please stop reading the internet. No promises. Around lunchtime, I met Marcus at our usual coffee shop. He looked like he hadn't slept since the board collapse. His hoodie said 404, morale not found. Dude, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. You know what this feels like? What? One of those movies where the nerd finally wins and everyone realizes they were working for a sociopath. I grinned. Yeah, except the sociopath still owns 3 yachts and a golf membership. Marcus opened his laptop. I pulled the analytics from PriceTech's site. Traffic's tanked 70%. Customers are moving to competitors. Bro, you could launch your own platform tomorrow and steal half their clients. Already working on it, I said. Phoenix Systems. Our tagline, we don't crash, we reboot stronger. He laughed so hard people stared. You're really doing this? Oh, I'm doing it. They tried to bury me under their brand. I'm turning it into my marketing campaign. That night my phone buzzed again. Bob the lawyer. Mr. West, he began, his tone less confident. Our client has approved $1.8 million. Bob, I said kindly, you're treating this like a yard sale. The price goes up, not down every time you call. Mr. West, $6 million, I repeated it. No NDA, public apology. Or I start licensing my code to every competitor with a pulse. He hesitated. That would be damaging. Exactly. Imagine how much damage $6 million could prevent. I'll get back to you. Take your time, Bob. I'll be counting zeros. The next day, PriceTech's stock dipped another 10%. CNBC aired another segment titled, When Genius Goes Rogue. They showed my face next to Gerald's and called me the whistleblower of the digital age. Lauren even texted me for the first time since the fight. Lauren, Dad's going insane. Can you please end this? Me. He started it. Lauren, this isn't just about him. Me. Then maybe he should have thought of that before he fired his only asset. No reply, just 3 dots, then nothing. It was weird. Part of me still wanted her to understand, to see that this wasn't about revenge, it was about respect. But Lauren measured success in reputation points. I measured it in freedom. 2 days later, I was in the middle of drafting Phoenix Systems' founder manifesto when Evelyn called. Congratulations, she said dryly. You've single-handedly destroyed our market cap. Always happy to help, I said. You'll be pleased to know the board's approved your demands. I raised an eyebrow, though she couldn't see it. All of them? $6 million. No NDA. And Gerald's signature on an apology letter. It will read, We regret the manner in which Mr. West was terminated and acknowledge his integral role in PriceTech's success. I whistled. That's a lot of syllables for I messed up. She paused. There is one condition. You deliver the decryption keys within 24 hours. Done, I said. Then after a beat, you know, Evelyn, if you'd been CEO instead of Gerald, we could have avoided this whole telenovela. She actually laughed. True. But then, you wouldn't have found your calling as corporate chaos incarnate. I'll put that on a business card. The transfer happened the next day at PriceTech headquarters under more security than a Marvel movie set. Jenny was there to witness it as legal counsel. Evelyn represented the board, and Gerald, for dramatic flair, was forced to sign the documents in person. He looked smaller than I remembered. No power suit, no swagger, just a man who finally realized his own legacy had a login screen he couldn't bypass. Jack, he started, voice hoarse, you really think this makes you a winner? I met his eyes. No, Gerald, it makes me free. He signed. Ink blotted slightly. Jenny took a photo for records and for posterity. Evelyn handed me the check folder and a printed copy of the apology letter. I skimmed it. Nice font choice, I said. Times New Regret? Jenny snorted so loud the intern by the door jumped. When it was over, Evelyn extended her hand. Congratulations, Mr. West. You've officially completed the most expensive IT exit in corporate history. I shook it, glad to set a benchmark. Gerald stared at me for a long moment, then muttered, You'll regret this. Already did, I said, walking out. 6 years ago when I accepted your job offer. Outside, reporters swarmed the front steps. Microphones flashed, voices blurred. Mr. West, is it true you walked away with $6 million? Will you return to PriceTech as a consultant? Do you consider yourself a hero or a villain? I smiled. Depends who you ask. Heroes get statues. Villains get sequels. The crowd erupted in laughter. I kept walking. Marcus was waiting by his car, grinning like a kid who'd just watched his teacher get fired. "6 million!" he yelled. "Dude, you're officially a tech myth." "Correction," I said. "I'm a startup budget now." We celebrated that night in the warehouse that would soon become Phoenix Systems' headquarters, a former printing factory that smelled like ink and ambition. Marcus hung a hand-painted banner that read, "Please don't fire the founder in front of witnesses." Jenny brought champagne and the QA twins brought pizza. We toasted to chaos, to freedom, and to the fact that our Wi-Fi worked better than price tags. "Gentlemen and ladies," I said, raising my glass, "here's to revenge with a profit margin." The room roared, music blasted. For the first time in years, I felt alive without the weight of Gerald's shadow. Later, after everyone left, I stood alone in the middle of the empty warehouse. The city lights spilled through the windows, casting a gold glow on the concrete floor. I pulled out my phone and read the apology letter again, just because I could. Then I snapped a photo and texted it to Lauren, me. "Thought you'd want a copy for the family scrapbook." She replied a minute later, "Guess you won." I stared at the screen for a while, then typed, "No, I just stopped losing." I put the phone away, looked around at the bare walls, and smiled. Tomorrow I'd fill this place with servers, desks, and dreamers who knew what respect looked like. But tonight, I let the quiet be the victory. Freedom wasn't a headline or a bank deposit. It was the sound of nobody else owning you any more than... The first time I walked into the warehouse that would become Phoenix Systems, I thought, this place smells like regret and potential. The air was thick with dust and old ink from its printing days, the kind of smell that screams bad decisions were made here, which made it perfect. Every startup begins in a place that looks like it should be condemned. Mine just came with better acoustics for dramatic speeches. It had these massive floor-to-ceiling windows, half-cracked, half-graffiti-tagged, and an echo that made every word sound like destiny or a bad podcast. Marcus stood in the middle of the room, laptop in hand, spinning in a slow circle. "It's hideous," he said. "Exactly." I grinned. "Nobody will see us coming." He looked at me like I'd just pitched him a pyramid scheme. "You sure you don't want, like, an actual office?" "This is an office," I said, spreading my arms. "Today it's dust. Tomorrow it's data. That's called vision." Vision smells like mildew. I ignored him, climbing the old metal staircase to the mezzanine. From up there, you could see the entire layout, wide open, full of possibilities. I could already picture the servers along the far wall, the desks by the windows, the whiteboard of chaos filled with half-baked genius. Jenny arrived 10 minutes later, wearing her lawyer power blazer and holding a box of donuts. "Gentlemen," she said, stepping carefully over a dead cockroach. "Welcome to your empire of tetanus." "Behold," I said, gesturing dramatically, "Phoenix Systems. Motto, we don't crash, we reboot stronger." Jenny smirked. "Catchy." Slightly threatening, but catchy. "Threatening sells," I said. Marcus plugged in an extension cord and immediately shorted a light. Sparks flew. "Okay," he muttered, "so maybe we need an electrician before we need a slogan." We laughed, because that's what you do when you have no money but way too much adrenaline. Within a week, the team started forming. Marcus brought in Priya, a back-end wizard who swore in 3 programming languages, and the QA twins, Zoe and Zach, siblings who argued so loudly during debugging that it sounded like an exorcism, but somehow always fixed the issue. Jenny agreed to serve as interim CFO/legal everything until we could afford one, which realistically meant Jenny was running the adult portion of the circus while I sold optimism and pizza. Our first investor call happened 2 days after we set up Wi-Fi that didn't randomly drop. The call was with Evelyn Chen because apparently poetic irony is the universe's favorite sport. "Mr. West," she said on screen, perfectly lit by some mysterious executive glow, "I see you've wasted no time." "We don't waste here," I said. "We iterate." "I'm intrigued by your proposal," she said. "But your investors will need assurance that Phoenix Systems won't repeat history." "You mean won't torch another empire?" Her lips twitched. "Precisely." I leaned in. "Ms. Chen, history doesn't repeat here. It gets rewritten." She looked like she wanted to applaud or have me arrested. Maybe both. By the end of that week, she wired us $3.2 million in seed funding. Just like that, 1 digit and 1 ego at a time, Phoenix was officially alive. The warehouse transformed almost overnight. Desks arrived. Laptops hummed. The smell of burnt coffee replaced the dust. Marcus rigged up servers that looked like Frankenstein's Wi-Fi experiment. Jenny handled the incorporation paperwork with the speed of someone who's sued people for fun. One night, around midnight, I stood in the middle of the floor while everyone worked. The sound of typing filled the air, rapid, rhythmic, hopeful. Priya cursed softly about semicolons. The twins argued about which of them broke the build. Marcus was half asleep with a soldering gun in his hand. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Jenny walked over, handing me a cold slice of pizza. "You know," she said, "most people would have taken their settlement and retired to the Bahamas." I thought about it and I said, "But I'd get bored after week 2, and I don't tan well." She smiled. "You thrive on chaos." "Nah, Jack. I thrive on purpose," I said. "Chaos just keeps me entertained." She raised her slice. "To purpose, then." I clinked mine against hers. To profitable revenge. 2 weeks later, Phoenix Systems had its first demo day. We invited a dozen investors, a handful of skeptical journalists, and even a few ex-Price Tech engineers who'd defected after Gerald's televised meltdown. Marcus handled the presentation because if I'd done it, I would have gone off script and accidentally started another war. He stood there in his usual hoodie, looking like the world's most confident, sleep-deprived genius. "Phoenix Systems," he began, "is not just software. It's resilience as a service. We build platforms that recover faster than your last relationship." The crowd laughed. He had them. I stood at the back, arms crossed, watching my people work the room. For years, I'd sat in boardrooms filled with buzzwords and bad cologne, pretending to be impressed by people who thought rebooting was a synonym for hope. But this was different. Real, raw, messy innovation. When Marcus ran the final live demo, the audience actually gasped. Our software recovered from a simulated network attack in under 6 seconds. Price Tech's old system had taken 32. Evelyn was in the front row, smiling that dangerous investor smile. After the presentation, she pulled me aside. "Impressive," she said. "You've built a system even Gerald would envy." I smirked. "Funny, I built that one too." She laughed. "You'll go far, Mr. West. Just remember, power attracts politics. Don't become what you defeated." I nodded. "Don't worry, Evelyn. I'm allergic to suits and hypocrisy." By week 3, Phoenix Systems was everywhere. Tech blogs called us the comeback story of the decade. Reddit called me the petty king of programming. LinkedIn influencers were already writing essays about my disruptive leadership philosophy. Which is ironic, since my philosophy was just, don't be Gerald. Lauren even texted me again. This time, it wasn't an argument. "Lauren, saw the interview, you looked happy." Me, "I am." Lauren, "Dad's been quiet lately." Me, "So has my inbox. Peaceful, isn't it?" She didn't reply, but I imagined her smile fading into something thoughtful. Maybe, just maybe, she was proud. Or maybe she finally realized I wasn't the guy in her father's shadow anymore. Either way, I didn't need her validation. The next day, our small victory turned into a media storm. One of the journalists from Tech World published a headline that made me spit out my coffee. "From fired to founder, how Jack West made Price Tech obsolete in 3 weeks." The article was savage. It quoted anonymous insiders describing Gerald's leadership as a mix of medieval and mildly unhinged. The closing line? "Jack West didn't burn the bridge. He automated its collapse." Marcus printed it out and taped it to the office wall. "Motivation," he said. I added a sticky note under it. "Hire this journalist." By month's end, we'd closed our first contract with a mid-tier logistics company, desperate to upgrade their system security. Their CEO, a woman named Talia Grant, shook my hand after signing the deal. "I read your story," and she said, "my ex-business partner tried to screw me over too. Here's to people who refuse to stay screwed." Cheers to that. I did. When the transfer cleared, Phoenix Systems officially became a multi-million-dollar company. Not bad for a startup born out of vengeance and caffeine. That night, we threw a party in the warehouse. Pizza boxes stacked like monuments to bad nutrition. The QA twins DJ'd. Marcus installed LED strips that made the walls glow like we'd coded the future into existence. Jenny brought champagne, naturally. She raised her glass. "To Jack West, the man who turned unemployment into an IPO." Everyone cheered. I laughed and said, let's not get ahead of ourselves. IPO's next year. Priya shouted, manifest it! Already did, I said. We danced, we laughed, we made terrible toasts. At one point, Marcus dragged me into a conga line. I don't remember much after that except that someone shouting, Gerald who? And everyone losing it. When the noise finally died down and the team trickled out, I stood in the center of the warehouse again, same spot as day one. The servers hummed softly. The air smelled like pizza and new beginnings. I looked up at the sign we'd hung above the entrance earlier that day. It read, Phoenix Systems, built by the people who know what crashing feels like. For once, I didn't feel bitter or sarcastic, just proud. I'd started as the quiet IT guy everyone underestimated. Now I was the founder of something real, something nobody could take away. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. I underestimated you. Don't make the same mistake I did. No signature, but I didn't need one. Gerald, I smiled, typed back, already learned that lesson. Thanks for the funding, though. Then I powered down my phone, looked around at my empire of misfits, and realized something crazy. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to anyone else's game. I was finally playing my own. And this time, I was the one writing the code for what came next. 2 weeks after Phoenix Systems officially launched, the headlines finally caught up to the truth. Price tech was dying, and the world was watching. Every morning started the same way for me now. I'd wake up, grab coffee, scroll through the news, and laugh out loud before even brushing my teeth. The top stories were all some variation of the same tragic comedy. Price tech stock plummets 45%, investors demand accountability, and board members resign amid data chaos. Former CEO Gerald Price says, we're just rebooting. Internet replies, sure, Grandpa. By day 3, CNBC ran a segment literally titled, How to Lose $1 Billion in 10 Days. Guess who was on the thumbnail? Gerald, mid-yell, veins popping, with my face grinning smugly in the corner, like a satisfied meme. Marcus called it poetic capitalism. I called it Tuesday. The whole city seemed to be buzzing about it. At coffee shops, I'd overhear people gossiping about that crazy IT guy who flipped the switch. Even Uber drivers knew my name. One asked if I could help him lock his ex-boss out of his company Slack. I told him I charged hourly. Meanwhile, in our warehouse-turned-headquarters, Phoenix Systems was thriving like a startup on a sugar rush. The walls were covered with whiteboards full of scribbles that looked like genius or madness depending on your caffeine level. The QA twins had created a mural made entirely of sticky notes that spelled Cutril plus ALT, delete your toxic job. Our inbox was overflowing with potential clients. Startups, nonprofits, even a few Fortune 500 companies sniffing around to see if the rumors about Price Tech's demise were true. Spoiler, they were. Jenny walked into my office one morning, laptop in one hand, Starbucks in the other, wearing that "we're about to make rich people cry" smile. Guess what? She said. Gerald got a LinkedIn ban? I asked. Better. Their CFO just quit on live television. I choked on my cough. And what? She spun the laptop around. On the screen, a live stream from a financial news network showed the CFO at a press conference, trembling, sweat glistening under the studio lights. I can't do this anymore, he said into the mic. We built everything around stolen code and arrogance. I resign. Then he dropped the mic and walked off. The anchor blinked, stunned, and muttered, well, that's one way to log out. Jenny grinned. You should send him a thank you card. I leaned back in my chair. Forget the card. I'm naming a server after him. We were still laughing when Marcus burst into the room, waving his phone. Dude, turn on CNBC right now. We did, and there it was. Gerald Price led from some expensive-looking home office that screamed exile with bad taste. He was trying to spin the narrative. Price Tech is simply undergoing a temporary technical adjustment, he said, his smile tighter than his tie. The host interrupted. Mr. Price, your servers have been offline for almost a month. Your last 3 board members just resigned. What exactly are you adjusting? Gerald blinked like he'd been hit by a pop quiz. We are innovating. Are you? The host said, deadpan. Because your former son-in-law's company, Phoenix Systems, just announced a $10 million funding round. The camera zoomed in on Gerald's face as his soul briefly left his body. Jenny clapped like she was watching stand-up. That's it. We've officially entered the public humiliation stage. I turned to Marcus. Get the champagne. We're celebrating. He pointed to the corner. Already chilling. That night we held a small Press F for Price Tech party in the warehouse. Someone brought cupcakes with little fondant flames on them. Priya made a playlist called Burning Bridges and Taking Names. We danced, toasted, and occasionally refreshed Twitter to see which journalist roasted Gerald next. Halfway through the night, Jenny climbed onto a table and raised her glass. To our founder, Jack West, the man who turned getting fired into a business model. Everyone cheered. I stood up, mock bowed, and said, I'd like to thank Gerald for teaching me everything not to do. Laughter erupted. The twins started chanting, Speech! Speech! I rolled my eyes but played along. All right, here's your speech. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're replaceable just because they write your checks. Learn your worth, own your work, and if they forget, remind them who built their empire, preferably in front of investors. The room exploded in applause and laughter. Marcus shouted, Preach, brother! I grinned. Now somebody cut me a piece of that cupcake before the frosting melts from poetic justice. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from Evelyn Chen. I called her back, and she picked up immediately. Mr. West, she said, you're enjoying this too much. Can you blame me? Not really, she admitted, but we have a problem. Define problem. Gerald just tried to sue Phoenix Systems. I blinked. For what? Existing? Essentially, yes. He's claiming unfair competition through insider knowledge. The board's already distancing themselves, but he's loud. He's talking to journalists, painting you as some kind of corporate anarchist. I chuckled. Well, he's not wrong. I'd suggest a statement, she said. Something calm and professional. Maybe highlight how Phoenix is about rebuilding, not revenge. Evelyn, I said, revenge is rebuilding. She sighed. Just try not to gloat too publicly. It's bad for the brand. Too late, I said, hanging up. Jenny handled the lawsuit like she was born for it. She filed a counterclaim so airtight, it might as well have come with a seatbelt. He's wasting ink, she said. His legal team's running out of caffeine and credibility. By week's end, the lawsuit vanished quietly. The media moved on, but the narrative was already set. The brilliant underdog beat the corporate Goliath. My LinkedIn inbox was flooded with messages that all sounded like the same copy-pasted fantasy. Hey, Jack, I just quit my toxic job because of your story. You're such an inspiration. Inspiration. That word felt weird. I wasn't trying to be anyone's hero. I just wanted peace, money, and a stable Wi-Fi connection. A few days later, Evelyn called again, this time with something I didn't expect. The board's decided to remove Gerald permanently. I'm taking over as interim CEO. I smiled. So the kingdom's officially under new management. Thanks to you, she said. And I don't say this lightly. Thank you for accelerating corporate evolution. I laughed. That should be your new slogan. She chuckled. Funny you mentioned that. We're rebranding, dropping price from the name entirely. Going with Novatech. Clean slate. Nova, I said. New star rising, not bad. Maybe one day. She said. Novatech and Phoenix Systems could collaborate again. Competitors make better allies than enemies. I thought about it. The old me would have jumped at the chance to be part of something familiar. But the new me had built an empire out of ashes. We'll see, I said, but just make sure your reboot doesn't include Gerald. Don't worry, she said. He's out for good. The press conference announcing Gerald's removal was streamed live. I wasn't planning to watch, but Jenny insisted. Closure, she said. Gerald stood at the podium, trying to look dignified, but you could tell he'd aged 10 years in 10 weeks. His hair was grayer, his posture slumped. Effective immediately, he said. I will be stepping down as CEO of Price Tech Innovations. I believe in letting the next generation lead. Jenny laughed. Translation, they took his key card. The camera panned to Evelyn, poised and confident. We thank Mr. Price for his contributions, she said, and we're grateful to all who've helped guide this company through its most transformative chapter. I turned to Jenny. That's corporate for thanks for crashing the plane. We'll take it from here. She grinned. Poetic as hell. Later that night, I got a text from an unknown number. He's out. Thank you for forcing the evolution we were too afraid to start. E. I smiled, poured myself a drink, and stepped out onto the balcony. The city lights stretched endlessly below, the hum of traffic like applause. Phoenix Systems was already planning its expansion. New contracts, new hires, new chaos. But standing there, looking out at the skyline, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. Not the quiet kind that comes after exhaustion, the earned kind. The kind that tastes like victory and closure, and maybe just a little bit of petty satisfaction. As I turned to head back inside, my phone buzzed again. Another message. This one from Lauren. Dad's broken. I've never seen him like this. Then maybe, I typed, he shouldn't have broken everyone else. I stared at the screen for a while before she replied, do you ever forgive people? I thought about that, watching the reflection of the city lights in my glass. Then I typed, eventually, after they reboot. And for the first time, maybe ever, I meant it. 3 months later, Price Tech was history, or as the internet called it, a case study in what happens when you fire the wrong guy. Gerald Price had officially been ousted. Evelyn Chen was now CEO, and the company, rebranded as Novatech, was slowly crawling back from digital death. Me? I was sitting in my office at Phoenix Systems, the one with actual sunlight and a fridge that didn't smell like betrayal, watching the news recap the whole saga like it was a true crime documentary. The headline read, From Fired to Founder, How Jack West Rebuilt the Future. I almost spit out my coffee. Rebuilt the future, sure. More like finally stopped working for idiots. Phoenix Systems was booming. We doubled our team, signed 3 Fortune 500 clients, and were now worth more than Price Tech had ever been. Investors called me visionary. Marcus called me emotionally unavailable with Wi-Fi access. He's not wrong. Then, one evening, as the city lights flickered through the windows, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. Gerald, we need to talk. I stared at the screen. For a second, I almost laughed. The man had more nerve than functioning servers. I poured myself a drink, leaned back, and typed 2 words that started it all. Me. Check email. Then I hit send and smiled. On his end, I imagined the confusion, the panic. The flashback to that fateful day when he'd marched into the boardroom and barked, "You're fired, boy." How poetic that his final message from me would be the same 2 words that had burned his empire to the ground. A few minutes later, Evelyn called. He reached out to you, didn't he? Of course, I said, like a moth to a firewall. She sighed. The board's done with him. He's officially retired. But he keeps asking for closure. Closure? I asked. He can download it as a PDF. She chuckled. I told him that. You've done enough, Jack. Let the past die. Maybe she was right, but when someone builds you into their villain, sometimes you have to let them keep their story. Mine had already moved on. That weekend, Phoenix Systems held its grand opening, our first official HQ launch downtown. A sea of reporters, clients, and investors filled the lobby. Cameras flashed. Someone handed me a mic I didn't ask for. I looked around at my team, Marcus, Jenny, the QA twins, Priya, all grinning like they'd survived a tornado and somehow ended up millionaires. 3 words, I said into the mic. Never, underestimate, quiet. The crowd laughed, applauded, and I raised my glass. To everyone who's ever been dismissed, overlooked, or told they were replaceable, build your own system. Make them wish they'd treated you right. Jenny shouted, and patent it under your name. The room erupted. Later, after the press left and the music softened, I slipped outside onto the balcony. The skyline glowed, each light a story, each window another ambition. For once, I wasn't thinking about revenge or legacy, just peace. My phone buzzed again, an email notification. I opened it. From Gerald Price, subject. I finally checked. Message, congratulations, Jack, you built something real. Maybe I taught you something after all. I stared at it for a long moment. No anger, no gloating, just quiet satisfaction. Me, reply, you did, you taught me how not to run a company. Then I hit send, turned off my phone, and watched the city breathe. The wind felt different that night. Not heavy like endings, but light, like the start of something. Freedom didn't come with a price tag or a headline. It came with 2 words, the same ones that had flipped my world upside down and right side up again. Check your email. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's delivering the message they never expected to read.